Ever played FNAF and thought, why am I not scared? Well, in today's video, I have 4 of the most scariest games I could find, and the order of games will get progressively scarier until we reach the scariest one. Also, if this video reaches 3,000 likes, I will make a follow-up to this video, so smash like button if you enjoyed. But anyways, without further ado, let's hop straight into the video. So the first game today is Five Nights at Friedrichs, and yeah, as you can see from the menu screen alone, this is going to be one absolutely insane game. So without further ado, let's hop straight into it. So we begin this game with a quick little news article stating that Friedrichs is now open. It also says how the frog is president, but I assume that's just some absolute random stuff. Something that startles me straight away is looking at the characters. Bonnie looks to be about 8 foot tall, which my mate pointed this out because I was streaming this on Discord, and yeah, he looks massive. But yeah, with that, getting straight into the game, we are pretty much just a night shift, night guard person, and on the cameras we can see the animatronics, and yeah, they look ridiculous. Bonnie is best to describe him like a jacked, tall, but extremely small-legged person. Chica has human hands, and Freddy just has a bunch of weird-looking teeth. He's also, I assume, crippled because his legs have braces on them, but nonetheless, this game is ridiculous. I mean, the art style alone and the office having the Obey Freddy picture is just top tier. On the cameras, there's some other stuff, like in Cam 4, there's a TV that plays. There's also just a bunch of cool details that you can find throughout the pizzeria, which are just awesome. There's also Foxy, who it seems to be just a skeleton with a foxy head. So yeah, I'm not really sure what to even make of that, but this first night is kind of just getting used to the gameplay. Mainly night 1 is just go to Cam 5, keep cooking pizza. This is how you, I assume, get rid of the threat of the place burning down, because yes, this place can catch on fire, and if it does, you need to use the sprinklers, which is the button in the top left. To add on to that, there's also a bunch of other stuff, like in Cam 10 there's a laser, but that won't be used till much later. But yeah, the main threat this night is Bonnie, who will go around the building starting to stalk us. Our goal is to make sure Bonnie doesn't get to the office, and if Bonnie does, we need to use the doors left and right. I keep calling him Bonnie. He's technically called Bernard for some reason, but I mean, hey, Bonnie, Bernard, same thing. Also, I really like how in the pictures, Bonnie is this really like skinny, lanky thing, but in the actual game, he's a massive jacked monster. I thought that was a cool detail. Bonnie did enter a few times, however, I used the lasers to make him go away, and pretty much I would get through night 1 quite smoothly and move straight into night 2. Night 2 begins, and again, you have the same things. You have to go ahead, cook pizza, do all that sort of stuff. However, this time around, there's going to be something new. Inside Cam 9, there's an endoskeleton. This night, the endo will start to move around, meaning that we're going to now need to keep track of 2 things. Also, another thing that I noticed is in the top left in the office, the poster keeps changing. I'm not sure if this is an Easter egg, but I thought it was quite strange. And there's also been some weird moments during my playthrough where weird things have happened, and yeah, I'm just gonna say that. But with the new endoskeleton being a threat, this night was going to be a little bit more intense. Also, Foxy is now awake, and the way Foxy works is during his time standing on the stage, he will eventually stop spinning the wheel. If the wheel ever stops spinning, we need to go ahead and respin it, as Foxy will run to the office, and if we don't spin the wheel in time, it will jump scare us. So yeah, that's pretty interesting, but overall this night is roughly the same, just with the 2 new threats. I spent more time looking around the pizzeria, seeing all the rooms and what they had to offer, and yeah, some rooms are just really cool with some insane Easter eggs, I would say. I mean, there's a bunch of cool looking pictures here, and I assume there's a Heisenberg picture in the top of these pictures, which I found quite funny. But yeah, after all that talking, night 2 was a little bit difficult because obviously the new threats, but I would get through it eventually and move straight into night 3. Night 3 is, again, different. We now have Freddy, who is a new animatronic in this night. Freddy is a little bit weird because he will start to kind of move, and not really move, kind of float in the front stage. If Freddy does this, he's going to the vents, and this is Cam 10. And at this point, you're going to need to wait till Freddy reaches the front of the vent, and if this does happen, you have to laser him. He then lets out a really goofy roar and proceeds to retreat. Just insane. But this night is a little bit more difficult. With all the new threats, sometimes I was pretty much getting bombarded, and this led to a few jump scares. But yeah, we really had to kind of lock in this night because there was going to be no room for error. The main thing I had to focus on was not letting the place burn down. I mean, many times I would randomly just see the place burning. I'm not even sure why. I assume Chica has something to do with this. But yeah, the place would start burning down, and my goal was to not let that happen. And Freddy as well, being a new threat, was a little bit hard to deal with. I also didn't know exactly how he worked, but after realizing that once you burn him he retreats, I was able to kind of comfortably move through his mechanic and the rest. But yeah, I was getting the rhythm of things and eventually would be able to beat night 3. Night 4 is a little different than night 3 because now we have a low power night. Apparently a birthday party was running late and they had to dip into some emergency power reserves, which means the whole building now is barely visible, which means I can't see nothing. Night 4 was going to be very difficult because we now don't have access to light. The only thing we have is a flashlight, and honestly, if I'm gonna be real, I couldn't see much because my monitor brightness settings were literally low as can be because I usually get trouble just looking at the monitor. I know I'm an old person. So I could literally barely see anything, and the one thing that kept creeping up on me was Bernard. Bernard has a habit of really not exposing himself, although he's the largest animatronic. So all you can see is his arm, which is the same hue and color as the background. So the only way to distinct him is using, I guess, a very keen eye. So I was getting jump scared quite a bit, and this was going to be definitely the most challenging night of the whole game so far. I first of all put my brightness of my monitor up because it was very low as I was playing, and this gave me a little bit more visibility. I was able to kind of check where everything was a little bit more smoother. But yeah, this night you could barely see anything. I mean, Freddy in the vent, you can only see his eyeballs, and I mean that's not much. This took me multiple attempts, but eventually I would really get the hang of finding out where things were. Mainly was again Bernard, figuring out when he's at the office and when he's not. I also found tracking Bernard on the cameras was a really smart choice because I could see where he was going to move roughly. But yeah, eventually I would beat night 4, and as this happens, something very strange occurs. The second we beat night 4, for some reason, a animatronic enters the office and forces us into a animatronic suit where we get spring locked. No, I'm not joking. The animatronic pushes us back and we get spring locked, which is insane, and I don't even want to imagine the type of pain that would cause. So that was night 4, and I guess we move into night 5, which is the final night of the game. So after getting brutally spring locked, we then move into night 5. Some things to expect in this night is not knowing what you're doing, panicking, and yeah, not fun. I think the first major difference is, well, the golden Freddy animatronic. This thing appears and we need to punch it, and for some reason it goes away. I mean, if I was looking at a spring locked person, I don't think I would want to stay in their vicinity. But yeah, this night was going to be brutal. And first of all, we are now a spring locked person. I mean, if you look when we grab the camera, we're using our tentacles. So yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but anyways, the first part of this night is basically trying to find where the animatronic is. Because if we don't find the animatronic, it's going to make it so our temperature is going to go up. And if we're not careful, we will overheat and we basically will burn the place down, including us as well. So our best bet is to find where Golden Freddy is and make sure that we're keeping track of the temperature. It's pretty difficult at first, but eventually when I learned how to actually track Golden Freddy and make sure I was checking him, I soon got to 1 AM, where the main bulk of the night begins. All the animatronics, including Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, are all active on this hour, and they will proceed to be active for the next couple hours of the night. We need to basically be on our absolute A game, as if we don't know what to do and we, for some reason, just stop, we're gonna get jump scared, no matter what. So yeah, it was very crucial to be on top of things, and going through cameras, making sure I wasn't letting the place burn down, it was stressful. It was very stressful. Especially with now there being 5 animatronics, including Golden Freddy, things were going to get a lot more tougher from here. And this all changed at 3 AM, where we now have to actually punch Golden Freddy if he appears in front of us. And if you think that was crazy, 4 AM changes everything. Now the whole building goes dark mode, and finally we have to fend everything off with no lights. So again, I can't see anything, animatronics are running wild, and I have no idea what's going on. Somehow, just somehow, I managed to get through 4 AM, barely scraping through this nightmarish hour. And then 5 AM is basically non-stop action where Golden Freddy is going from one spot to the other in just milliseconds. We have no time to react. Everything just combines for an absolutely beastly night, and getting through this night was the most biggest relief I've ever had. When this happens, we finally have a full memory wipe, and we're left on the floor forgetting who we are and why we are even in this suit. This ends the main game, and with the caption, "Welcome on in the family," which I assume is something for welcome to the family. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, there's night 6, I forgot to mention. So the Five Nights at Friedrichs Pizzeria is now hiring again. They have said that they want new faces as their last security guard, well, is no longer doing so well. So on March the 5th, 2009, we get a newsletter saying how they want more staff, and we then accept the night shift. As we enter the office, all we can see is what seems to be a suit that hasn't been used in ages. Don't worry about the tentacles coming out of it or the really suspicious teeth that resides on its face. You know, I think it's just a random animatronic. Oh, what's that? Its eyes starting to move? Okay, so it's actually alive. You don't already know, yes, I am being sarcastic. This is obviously the security guard that got spring trapped or spring locked. And it seems to be now a animatronic that is trying to attack us. How this thing works is essentially it will slowly begin to stand up. You do not want this. Instead, you want it to remain as inactive as possible. To do this, you're going to need to hold the left click on it, and this will just make it go backwards in its progression, because if it gets too active, you will not be able to access the cameras, and that will result in most likely a game over. And that is basically all the new stuff for night 6. This is overall the same as the previous nights. However, with the new Springtrap animatronic, we do have to keep a lot more focus on the office as opposed to the cameras. I'd like to say night 6 is just a harder night 4, but with a random animatronic in the office. For this night, I would get closer and closer to 6 AM, just pretty much going through what I did before, checking the cameras so that Chica doesn't make a fire, making sure I was getting rid of Foxy if he went into the office. If Freddy went into the vent, I would keep tabs of him and make sure that Springtrap doesn't really become too active. With all that said, eventually I would beat night 6 and we would get a payslip of $217 for the night shift. And with that, that pretty much wraps up the game. We can now fully say we have beaten Five Nights at Friedrichs. I do hop into the extras menu like I usually do, and here we can see every single character in their full glory. You have all the different animations, you've got some low power mode screenshots. We even have the security guard, Alan Fritter, who looks absolutely drippy as hell. There's so many weird random animatronics, including a really mystic and cryptic one where the game actually crashes upon looking at it. Not sure what that's all about, but maybe it's a ghost, who knows. There's also a bunch of posters which are really awesome. This Friedrich director's cut one is really sick. And there's also a bunch of fan characters like this marionette one that is pretty sick. This Ined one which looks just disgustingly cool. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff here, and with that, that's about it. There's a bunch of other end screens that we haven't gotten yet, but I assume this is how you have to beat the max mode. And for the sake of this video not going too long, I'm going to hop straight into the next game. So yeah, awesome game, but let's move on to the next. Okay, we move into the next game, which is called Five Nights at Freddy's Cleanup Crew. This is the employee assessment teaser, and is essentially a little sneak peek on what the full game will be. It's almost 3 years old, so I'm assuming that if there's a full game in development, perhaps it's near completion, or maybe it was scrapped completely. I have no idea, to be honest, but without further ado, let's hop straight into the teaser. This game begins with the main character essentially being in a really random building. We don't know where we are, we don't know why we're here, the only thing we know is that we can move forward. We come in contact eventually with a room that seems to be where we're going to be questioned. We go ahead and get scanned, and the machine tells us that we're 67% insecure, whatever that means, but anyways, after that, the whole thing begins. The machine then starts to question us, saying questions like what brings you comfort, do you trust the machine, and essentially testing us, because if we don't answer correctly to our right, a certain someone will begin to activate. This being Freddy, and he will begin to get more aggressive as we answer incorrectly. The incorrect answers are basically anything that isn't to the machine's liking. So if you say something that's offensive, or if you just say the wrong thing, it will begin to activate Freddy. So we have to stay tight-lipped and make sure that we're saying everything correctly, or else Freddy will break the door down, delivering the punch of 87. This eventually leads to the machine just malfunctioning, and we then need to find a confidential security code. The code can be found through this vent system, which is conveniently placed on the other side of the building. So we have to go through this vent area until we reach this room, which is just a tedious process. There's not really much to go through, there's just a bunch of random noises and I guess ambience. When we reach the room, a code can be seen, and with this code we can then re-enter the vents. However, the thing tells us to be very careful and to follow the music no matter what. With caution, we re-enter this vent system, going through it by listening to the music. We listen to the music, making sure we don't drift that much from it, as we don't really want to mess with whatever's in the vents at this point. This eventually leads us back to this room where we can find ourselves answering more questions. This time though, Freddy is a little bit more aggressive and will start to kind of activate more and more. So we go through another like 20 questions with some really strange questions like what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Personally, I'm a cookies and cream type of guy, but I mean, leave yours in the comments what your favorite ice cream flavor is. But yeah, this takes a little bit of time going through everything, and that leads us to question 39, which leads to the whole building becoming level 3 security. The building is in self-destruction mode, and this is not the best news to hear, especially being placed right in the center of the building. We have 25 seconds to prepare for impact because somehow the security has just lost its mind, so the only thing we can do is brace and prepare for impact. The place explodes. However, we somehow are not affected by this explosion whatsoever. After tanking this absolutely massive explosion, we just get up like nothing even happened. If that wasn't Sigma enough, I don't know what is. We then go downstairs and start to crawl around the vents of the pizzeria, I'm assuming, or honestly whatever this building even is. We then stumble across Freddy, who seems to be as menacing as ever, but we ignore that, continue our way down, and eventually stumble across the staircase we were at the beginning of the game. This then loops to a place that we've never been before, and by activating this generator, this door then opens. The next section is a maze where the following animatronics are going to be after us. We now have to say hi to Freddy and Toy Chica, who are conveniently stalking this maze that we have to go ahead and, well, explore. We need to find all these power generators that are placed throughout this maze, and essentially there's these cupcakes on the floor. If you step on the cupcake, it will alert the animatronic, but the interesting part is I stepped on these cupcakes, yet there was no animatronics that came after me, so I'm a little confused, but I mean, I will take that. But yeah, Toy Chica and Freddy are roaming these hallways, and it's our goal to power up everything. Narrowly, I somehow escaped this maze on my first go, and after doing this, we could then enter this new door. This opens up a completely like massive warehouse section that is just huge. I mean, look at this, it's massive. And as we walk, we get enclosed by this metal like thing. And all of a sudden, Freddy just decides to jump scare us, and I didn't record this, but I screamed so loud that I think my voice box is permanently damaged. Anyways, after that, we have to run away from Freddy, who will run after us in this terrifying manner, and our goal is to make it toward this elevator, and we barely make it onto the elevator, as Freddy just narrowly avoids us. This elevator takes us to floor -42. So this building is absolutely massive, or it could just be not even a building, but just, I don't know, a manifestation of our mind. Okay, enough theorizing. This ends up leading us to a new location. This game is kind of just going from one spot to the other spot, but here is where we get a new item. This item being the hacking item, which is, I guess, how we're going to now hack stuff. The only use for this hacking item is to hack this generator. That's literally the only time we ever use the item. So honestly, it's a pretty useless thing. But I mean, it looks like a DS, so it looks cool. We then find another massive, just abandoned place, and if you know what happened before, you can kind of assume that another animatronic is going to chase us. This time it's Music Man, who is somehow just there. I don't know how he got to the building, but yeah, Music Man is now chasing us. The game then plays some security breach music, and we just have to run until we find this vent. As soon as this happens, we have to run into the vent and again escape Music Man. Honestly, this game is getting more wild as we go. We then stumble full circle as we eventually make it back to the question room. This time around, the whole thing is very much different. I mean, the whole beginning section is cryptic. I mean, there is something wrong with this room. The room then goes dark and this door opens up, which leads to an elevator. After taking the elevator, it stops randomly and it then just has Plushtrap, who is just chilling in the elevator shaft for some reason. Plushtrap then does some weird movements, which leads to literally nothing as, well, the game just goes dark. And we awake in a forest. I'm not even joking, I'm not making this shit up, that's genuinely what's happened. And as we move through this forest, we magically find a house, which contains Circus Baby, because I mean, let's just chuck random animatronics because why not? But hey, I mean, Circus Baby just goes I guess, talking about how there's going to be more stuff and that's it. And the game ends. There's a quick little teaser for the next game, I guess, but yeah, that's about it. Overall, FNAF Cleanup Crew is an interesting game to say the least. Is it terrifying? Not really, I would say, but I mean, it is a definitely cool looking game and has a very cool premise, being that you have to actually question the animatronics or at least answer to them. But yeah, all in all, pretty cool game, not the scariest, but let's just move straight into our next FNAF game. Okay, so this next game is called Freddie In Space, weirdly spelt Freddy with an I-E. And you can pretty much tell that this game is going to be unlike anything we've played before. I mean, it's in space. Enough waffle, let's hop straight into this game. We begin with a quick little heads up on how the animatronics are going to work. And essentially, what we need to focus on straight away is Freddy and his companions. These being Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie. All three animatronics will appear on the cameras, and they can be sent back by using the mask. The mask is essentially, I guess, something these animatronics fear, as if the mask is seen, they will retreat back to their original spots. The mask itself looks just really eerie. I don't know, there's something about how this looks that for me doesn't feel right. But anyways, yeah, the office itself, well, if you want to call it an office, it's more like just a spacecraft. And all we have to our left is what we can barely assume to be some sort of planet. I'm assuming Earth. We have a bunch of buttons and stuff. To our right, there's a massive vent door that contains Space Trap, which I'll get into in a second. But yeah, the whole thing is pretty eerie. There's a bunch of floating stuff and we are pretty much in zero gravity. I'm just really wondering, if we're in zero gravity, then how are we sitting down? I mean, I don't want to get too picky, but it doesn't really make much sense unless something is holding us down. Anyways, enough being a geek. This is pretty much as confined as you can get in terms of an office. The door to our right contains Space Trap, which pretty much acts as Freddy from FNAF 4, let's just say. Because we have to keep checking on this door and make sure that it's wound shut. Because if the valve starts to unwound, this will cause the oxygen to go down, which will result in Space Trap jump scaring us. So occasionally, just once every so often, just go here, hold the left click on the valve, and this should get rid of Space Trap. As I said before, the other animatronics are very simple to, well, go through. However, that wasn't the case on my first playthrough. I actually had no idea what I was even looking out for. The mechanics are pretty weird. You have to go to a different location to deal with the animatronics that don't come to you, which you may just think, why do I have to go to this other spot when nothing's appearing? I would learn the hard way that, well, if nothing's appearing, then something's not right, and eventually, well, I would get jump scared. My next attempt was quite better. I would now actually check the cameras and see what's on them, and yeah, these things look very, very bad. Freddy is this, I don't even know what you would even call this, a skull in a suit. Definitely the most unique design of Freddy I've ever seen in any FNAF game, period. This is awesome. Chica is, honestly, I don't even know what to call this. It's like a massive demigorgon. Does that even make sense? It has like an empty face with a bunch of claws, which makes it look just something out of Alien, to be honest. And then Bonnie, who is probably the most recognizable character. The only thing that's different is there's a bunch of eyeballs on him. I don't know why, there just is. Basically, what we had to do is once every so often when the characters weren't appearing on the cameras, go to the different room and use the gas mask. We would have to use the light to identify what's there, and after this, obviously, use the mask and that thing should go away. I can't even begin to explain how much panic I went through this night. I had no idea what I was doing. I assumed what I was kind of alluding to was working, but then again, Grab Trap or Space Trap wasn't even attacking me, and the animatronics were appearing pretty much once every so like few minutes, so I had no rhythm. I just simply went from one side, went to the other place, and continued to just go for it. And eventually I would get very close to the moon, which was the objective we had to get to. I just had to survive for a little bit more, so by using the mask and fending off the remaining animatronics, eventually my shuttle would reach the moon. This was very comforting, as we had now reached our final destination. As we land on the moon, the game goes black, and all we can see is the successful "You landed on the moon" screen pop up. We can then roam across the moon, however, this barren wasteland doesn't really hold too much value beside this weird object on the moon. At that point, we looked up to the stars and had a massive sigh of relief, as we had just survived Freddie in Space. Alrighty, so the last game for today's video, the scariest game we have, is Showman's The Awakening. Already, just the main menu itself is already giving me a very, very bad feeling about this. The animatronics kind of look like those really scary looking puppets from Toy Story 4, if you know what I mean. But anyways, with that, we hop straight into night 1. Also, just look at these guys performing. They look so goofy, but at the same time, they do not look friendly, I can tell you that. Moving into the first night in the office, we have a few things to keep track of. The first thing is the animatronic in front of us. This lovely person is going to be staring at us the whole time we're playing, and all we can do is simply avoid it. Well, if it starts to get active, I don't know, it begins to awake, maybe it actually attacks us, we have to use the lever to our right. Using the lever, it will cause an electric shock, which will make it so the animatronic deactivates. However, we have to be sparing, as we only have a limited amount of shocks before either the animatronic gets too angry, or we end up endangering ourselves and causing ourselves to become, well, electrified. That's pretty much it for this animatronic. The rest of the pizzeria, or whatever this place is a very barren warehouse. There's a bunch of vents which aren't used till later. There's a random pirate guy, and we have a bunch of random animatronics on the main stage. On the first night, we only have 2 animatronics who are active, this being the blonde animatronic guy and the one with the green shirt. These 2 animatronics will begin to move, going through cam 5 and cam 4 respectively, then moving around to cam 1 and cam 9, and then eventually wrapping to our office. We simply need to keep these 2 things away from us, and the only way to do that is by using the mask in our office. The mask is below this desk, and by using the mask, we can actually get rid of all the animatronics. However, we have to be careful, as using the mask for too long can cause us to suffocate. So we have to be very sparing with what we're using and not using the items for too long. This first night is pretty much just get rid of all animatronics, and I kid you not, I was so confused how to use this mask at first. I just kept the mask on, and as I said before, doing that is not a smart idea, as eventually you lose oxygen, leading to a game over. My next attempt, I tried to not use the mask as much as possible, only using it when I really needed it. And it was terrifying. I mean, I had no idea how these animatronics were going to attack me. I could just see them in front of me, and just not knowing when to use the mask was very stressful. And eventually the animatronic just runs toward me, and that's when you have to use the mask. This took me off guard multiple times because I was just caught off guard, to be honest. I did not expect this to happen. This happens pretty much throughout the night. There's not really much else for the first night, and eventually I would complete it. After the night, we get a cutscene of what seems to be our employer. And first of all, these cutscenes themselves are absolutely amazing. The game itself is made on Blender, so you get this really cool, smooth looking cutscene that is very authentic. I have not seen this in a FNAF game so far. Yeah, this guy basically tells us that you're doing good, but just keep an eye out on things and continue to contact me after every night. We listen to this person who is seemingly very kind, and at that point we end this night and move on to our next shift. The next shift is basically the same, but there's a few new things we need to keep tabs of. The first very important thing we need to keep tabs of is the new pirate animatronic. This guy is on cam 6. He is seen standing on the far corner of the room. However, there's many occasions where it may go up and start to roam. We need to keep the camera set on it occasionally. If we don't do this, it will exit the room and go running full blast toward our office. We want to avoid this at all costs because it will lead to a guaranteed game over. This was very alarming, however, the rest of the night remains the same, which, I mean, thank God. But yeah, there's going to be definitely a new type of gameplay loop because we can't just keep checking on the animatronics to our left and right. We need to now use the mask and also our camera, which means we have to be keeping tabs of a lot of things. This, as well as the animatronic in front of us, does make night 2 significantly more challenging. And this would lead to a few hiccups, and something that I was not expecting this game to have was game over screens. You know the game over screens from Batman? Yeah, they are in this game as well, and they are really cool. I mean, I've never seen a FNAF game ever do this before, so honestly, very cool idea, and the way they just sound in these game over screens is very haunting. But yeah, night 2 was definitely an increase in difficulty, but eventually I would get through it. After this, the game says, "Can you hear me?" And this leads us to a cutscene with a random entity down this hallway. Not much is really shown to us beside the thing stalking us, and this pretty much puts us straight into shift 3. Alright, so moving into shift 3, there's going to be some new things happening in the warehouse. The first thing of notice is the new animatronics that will be active this night. This being the remaining cast on the stage. These two animatronics will enter our vent systems, and I mentioned before that the vents would eventually be used, and now is that time. The animatronics will eventually wander toward the vents. They could enter any of these 3 vents, and it's our goal to try and shut off the vent system. However, the key thing is that you can only shut off one vent system at a time. So if the animatronics are coming from both vent systems or all 3, this means that we can only shut off one and leave the other one open, which can cause some really tight gameplay moments that can really be stressful. It's important that for night 3 we're keeping composure at all times, as at this rate everything is kind of out and about to get us. I mean, you have the pirate animatronic mixed with the ones to our office. There's so many things to keep tabs of, and it can get really intense. I think it's really similar to night 2, just do the same things, check your cameras, just go onto the vent cams once every so often. And with all that said and done, yeah, this night was going to be definitely a difficulty increase. But with enough attempts later, I would get very close to finishing the night. And by just really nailing when the office animatronics enter and walk toward me and using the mask as efficiently as possible, this gave me a massive edge and definitely got me through night 3. As we end night 3, we get a new cutscene of us being in the backstage. This room is boarded off or sealed off for the cameras, and interestingly, there's a cool little doll or like toy that is in this crate. However, after picking up the toy, we end up falling down, and this was very strange and weird. But after this, we exit the facility, but definitely some stuff is starting to happen toward our character. Perhaps we are becoming, I guess, insane. So we begin night 4, and this night is essentially night 3, but obviously more difficult. The animatronics are noticeably more aggressive. This also includes the animatronic in our office. It makes for a hectic night. There is so many things that can go wrong, including not checking the vents, missing the pirate animatronic and him running to our office, and just the animatronic in our office, the lady, just getting really aggressive and ending our night at any stage. There is so many things that can go wrong, which does make night 4 a very stressful one at that. There would be some major points where I was I was lost, to be honest, like putting the mask on, then going straight to my cameras, doing everything. It was like, I couldn't really have time to think. I just had to kind of go with the flow. And overall, I would describe this night as absolute torture. But eventually though, I would somehow scrape through night 4. After this, we end up in our home actually. We are outside and we called the place up. They say that our shift tomorrow is no longer going to happen as the place is going through some shutdown. Obviously, you know, being the sane person we are, we go back to the building and we are greeted with a phone call. It states that everything is very much not safe. This building is actually being completely demolished as the animatronics have become very aggressive. It's pretty much life or death here, and us going to the building again was possibly the worst decision we could have ever made. But I mean, hey, night 5, and let's see what can go wrong this night. So immediately we realized that the animatronics are not playing around this night. I kid you not, there was multiple times where there would be 3 animatronics like going to attack me. I had the 2 in the vents that were literally ready to go. I had the pirate one and also the one in my office and also the lady in front of me. This made things chaotic. I had to pretty much be perfect with my gameplay. The way I went around doing this is by firstly shutting off the vent to the left side of the system. This would get rid of that animatronic. After this happened, immediately deactivate the right side, put the mask on and use the electric shock, and then make sure I check the pirate animatronic in that order. If I failed this at all and I wasn't quick enough, then there was no chance I would survive this encounter. The animatronics had basically strategically attacked me and there was only one way to, survive, and that was to play perfectly. There was many times where things were extremely tight and they were very close. And overall, night 5 would take me multiple attempts. In fact, it would lead to hours at one point. The night itself, again, just incredibly hard. Honestly, one of the hardest challenges I've played in a FNAF game. But I kept going. I started to utilize the lights more because I realized if I stalled the animatronics, I could really make it to where the animatronics will arrive when I want them to. This would be preferably after I shock the lady, just so I can have enough time to use the mask. Because if I do it in the other order, this means that the lady may attack me as I'm using the mask, which if you don't know is a instant game over. But yeah, with a few new things that I implemented, I made the night a little bit more manageable, but still it was incredibly hard, especially with the vent animatronics and the pirate being so unforgiving. My attempts would start going into the 4 AMs and eventually the 5 AMs. It was tense. There was one run where I was on 5 AM. Nothing was going wrong. But still, I had to make sure I was paying attention because in this game, anytime you panic or make a wrong move, it's instantly game over. And soon enough, eventually, 6 AM would arrive. Main character Mark is put on a chair. We cannot move as we seem to be compressed onto the chair. In front of us, the entity arrives with a mask. It simply puts the mask on our face and that would be the end of Mark as we know it. Not much is known what happens to Mark. However, Night 6 seems to answer these questions. Night 6 begins with the new character Matthew entering the establishment. We see Mark, who is now possessed by the mask and simply just attacks us after staring at us. This instantly gets us straight into Night 6 and immediately you can tell that the establishment has been completely run down. The corridors, the hallways, the vents, everything seems broken and it seems that the crew have actually gone ahead and taken out the animatronics. Also they thought, as the pirate one and the one in front of us are still remaining. Mark is the main threat of the night. Basically, it acts as the animatronics that were attacking us from the hallways. However, when Mark enters the office, we need to use the flashlight and use it repeatedly, as the mask that we were using before is now, used for Mark, who is possessed by it. And the other animatronic is the vent one, and this is just a really terrifying looking thing. It resembles, I guess, Mark, but I assuming the entity that was talking to him throughout the game. And this thing is basically just like the vent animatronics, just shut it when it's inside the vents. But yeah, nothing much really changes beside the visual aesthetics of the, well, animatronics. But still, this night was very hard, as we had to play perfectly as, well, Mark and the vent animatronic are very aggressive. They will attack repeatedly throughout the night, and it's our job to keep them away as much as possible. Another thing I forgot to mention is our flashlight does have limited use, so we have to be very cautious when we use our light, because this place is completely pitch dark, so our light is the only way we can visibly see the animatronics. Eventually I would beat night 6, and at this point we exit the establishment. However, Mark is right behind us, and the door to exit is locked. Tragically, Matthew is also possessed and barely just, well, doesn't escape. With that, that pretty much concludes Showman's The Awakening. Overall, an amazing FNAF game. What happened to Mark and Matthew remains a mystery, and hopefully a follow-up to this game can show perhaps the aftermath of this game. But yeah, we do get an extras menu, a gallery of sorts, where we can see all the animatronics and they look just fantastic. This game is I believe a remaster of the original game, and they really went all out with the designs and the overall feeling of the game. So yeah, huge props to these developers, as they absolutely killed it. This is by far one of my favorite FNAF games overall in terms of gameplay and just the story. I mean, this is genuinely a fantastic game. So those were all the games for this video. If you have enjoyed, smash a like, and if you are brand new here and never want to miss out on a future upload, then please consider subscribing as well. And on screen here is the full series of these videos which I've made in the past. So if you want to go ahead and watch 3 hours of FNAF games, then that's a video you should check out. But anyways, until next time, take it easy and goodbye.